Welcome everyone to today's CSIA Partner Webinar Series. My name is Colin Hammond and I will be your host today. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSIA, we are a global nonprofit professional association with over 500 member companies in 40 countries. Our mission is to advance the practice of control system integration to benefit our members and their clients. Our vision is to ensure that manufacturing and process automation everywhere have access to low-risk, safe, and successful application of automation technology. CSIA membership offers members access to resources needed to attain and exceed business goals. To highlight just a few of our many member benefits, the CSIA Best Practices Manual guides control system integration companies in the setup and running of a solid company. CSIA's business insurance program offers members an excellent insurance program for business owners, subcontractors, and more. The program includes members from all over the world enjoying the peace of mind that comes with CSIA insurance. Clients in all industries are now seeking integrators with the CSIA certification alongside ISO. They recognize CSIA certifies integrators' commitment to industry standards and business acumen. As a result, being certified can shorten the sales cycle. CSIA Industrial Automation Exchange is the premier automation guide featuring system integrators and suppliers who provide industrial, manufacturing, and process automation solutions. For integrators and suppliers, it's a place to market their expertise. Clients will find white papers, case studies, capabilities, contact information, and engage in conversation directly with CSIA members. Please be sure to follow CSIA's online events calendars for all upcoming webinars. You won't want to miss these opportunities to learn from the comfort of your own office or home. And for more information about CSIA, please visit our website or contact us at info@staff.controlsys.org or 847-686-2245. And at this time, I would like to pass it over to Jose Rivera and introduce our panelists.
Hey, thank you very much, Colin. Let me put on the presentation here. Can anybody see? Is this being seen?
Not yet. I'm going to go ahead and stop. You can go ahead and take that. All right,
so thank
good.
you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Colin, for this introduction. Today, we have a very interesting panel to talk about the impact that system integrators can have on digital transformation and in the process building SaaS economy. We have a few housekeeping directions. So if you have questions along the presentation, please type them in the Q&A box. And we will find a way to weave in your questions, most likely at the end. And if you would like also to have specific comments to me, please put them in the chat box. So we're trying to answer all the questions at the end of the discussion. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce today's distinguished panel. I'll start with Sarosh Gatzner. He's an IT consultant at Kite Pharmaceutical, organizing IIOT integration and business engagement for process development and manufacturing science. Prior to this, he was head of IT engineering systems at Shire Pharmaceuticals, which was later acquired by Takeda, a position he held for over 5 years. At Shire, he led shop floor architecture and integration, managed business partner engagement with engineering, and established global programs for a process information system and OT cybersecurity. Paul O'Sullivan graduated from the Cork Institute of Technology in Ireland in 2005 with a degree in applied physics and instrumentation. He worked on automation projects in the life science industry as an automation engineer for 5 years before founding Skelling in 2010. Skelling was founded with the goal of radical improvement of the organization of the best engineering talent in the world and to provide groundbreaking solutions to the life science industry. Damien O'Connor is a professional software consultant and technology executive with more than 10 years of software development and architecture experience, with success focused on design and development of data infrastructure. As the Chief Technology Officer, Damien leads the TQS products and services group in the design data infrastructures for their customers across the globe. Damien has demonstrated advanced expertise in system integration, data modeling, and analytics, having designed and participated in various manufacturing intelligence programs. Last but not least, Rajiv Anand brings 30 years of industrial automation experience implementing process control and asset health solutions using Emerson process automation platforms for power, mining, pharmaceuticals, and chemical industries. Rajiv held key engineering management and leadership positions with Emerson and their impact partners. Prior to starting Quartic, Rajiv spent a year researching industrial AI and machine learning and advising technology companies and customers on digital manufacturing strategies. I am Jose Rivera, the CEO of the Control System Integrators Association, and today we are going to go into this panel discussion. So what we want to accomplish today is try to identify the challenges for the traditional system integrators in industrial automation. Then we want to understand the building of the digital system integrator. What are the roles and responsibilities? And then identify success criteria for a SaaS economy. And so I would like to start by asking Sarosh, to provide his input on how he views the future of automation and why is the digital system integrator needed. Sarosh?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Hello.
Yes, Sarosh. Yes.
Hello, everybody. So the way I would like to kind of summarize that is what we've seen from the industry is that we have almost three layers. We have the manufacturing shop floor where we have the sensors and measurements. We have what we'll call the operational layer where we take those sensors, measurements, and control system outputs, and we try to build it into the operational processes where we have many different systems, functions, and silos in that layer. And then we have a business layer, typically where we have well-defined ERP systems like SAP and others, where we do the planning and where we have the business intelligence and visualization. And usually when we are automating the shop flow, and my background is the pharma side of it, we basically are trying to make sure that the process as validated is implemented in the manufacturing systems that we have, Delta V, DCS, control systems. And in that process, we also have been trying to digitalize. So pharma is probably behind most industries in that area. We have been using technology that, and approaches that have been good for the last 20 years. But as we put in these systems, we still struggle with the end result. That is, yes, we are putting in sophisticated systems like Delta V and MES, but we still don't realize what leaders want at the organization. They tend to want today the ability to monitor in real time how they're doing to the plan. So performance management, right? Be able to look at that. They want to deploy digital things like the digital twin, machine learning to get predictive capabilities, predicting performance, predicting reliability. And so we have this IT layer that's sitting at the business side, and then the operations layer, the shop floor layer. And a lot of why we cannot get to those final results of being able to do more real-time visualization of performance, being able to pull data together in the operational space to feed our supply chain and other requirements is because it's really tied to the interface and the communication and the standards that are needed there. So in many cases, we have projects that deploy things, but there isn't an understanding of how we're going to eventually achieve these goals, the benefits of digital. And so we're always looking for integrators that can leverage their experience to tell us more, to become advisors to us in these projects, to tell us from their experience, how we can leverage the things we're doing, the things that we may be missing, to be able to speak both between IT and OT, to be able to speak between the functions, to be able to prepare us for the future. So that's the expertise we tend to look for in integrators as we deploy. Now, obviously, there is another opportunity in pharma that's been developing is, okay, so we have the automation systems that automate the process, but now we want other information from the shop floor. We want energy information. We want information related to mobile equipment, things that we didn't traditionally automate and had no need to automate. Now that gives the opportunity to deploy IoT devices into that space. But again, then comes the challenges of deploying IoT at scale. Because when you deploy IoT at scale, you need advice on how are you going to manage these IoT devices? How are you going to deal with security at the shop floor? How are you going to orchestrate all this equipment and manage them as the IoT? And how can you develop standards again? So again, you need an integrator who is experienced with the standards in the industry, SA95, things like that, ISO 95. Again, an understanding of where the industry is heading, the business goals, the various functions, and help us break down the differences between each of those silos. So there's that opportunity to deploy right from the shop floor these sensors. And then how do we merge it with the other information we have? So to get the right visibility at the shop floor, but also to get the right visibility up in the business and to make us more successful in deploying things like machine intelligence, because we do a lot of POCs in machine intelligence. And when we realize that we're doing these, we tend to have issues at the end of that. And many of those are because there isn't real clear vision and strategy and understanding between the top business layer, the IT layer, and the OT layer. We're missing expertise on how to get that. We're missing data that's needed in the integration. We have we've already digitalized a lot of data in our legacy systems, but we're still missing other contexts that we need to make that machine intelligence POC a success. So really, this is about how do we move towards this future vision. And I think it really needs an OT integrator in this space to advise, because the IT platforms are there. There's a lot more experience in doing this at the IT and the business layer. It's how we bring these two layers together and be successful.
Very good.
Seems to be the challenge.
Challenge, but I would also say opportunity, right? Because this is really expanding the role of the system integrator in a good way, I think. Now, would you want to comment on how you see the roles of the system integrator and the technology providers evolving?
Yeah, so I think, as you can see on the slide, I think I mentioned some of that in my earlier discussion. I see them becoming more a trusted advisor to really accelerate that digital journey, which means helping customers fill in the gaps where they don't have the expertise, being able to answer questions, being able to ask the right questions as projects are deployed, which are really pieces of this infrastructure that has to be built. That digital integrators, in my opinion, should have experience in this area. The more experience they have, the more advice they can provide based on that experience both in the industry, experience on how to integrate IT and OT, experience in standards that exist, experience with the type of equipment, the type of objectives the organization may have. And then understanding platforms and understanding how to actually bring all this together. Understanding, of course, that organizations are also maturing, right? It's not that everybody's at a different level. Every project has different objectives, but how do you build those almost those foundational steps to get there?
Very good. Thank you. So now I would like to move into the challenges of the IT-OT gap in implementing smart manufacturing. And I would like to reach out to Paul, who has a lot of experience coming from the life sciences industry side. Paul?
Thanks, Jose. Hi, everyone. So in general, with IT and OT, obviously, as the discussion's just been going on now, IT is all your business drivers, your SAP type stuff, and OT then would be the PLCs, Delta V, any edge devices, control over those devices, and how that data can be integrated in a useful way so that the business can make quicker decisions around what it needs, what it's seeing on the shop floor. And that's a really big challenge, and it's really easy to brush over it. And we've done a lot of work, and there's a lot of awareness has been raised about IT and OT and about this need. And really all it means is we need to connect these things together, and we need to have a context for how we connect them. And that in general is still missing. And, you know, to me, there's a lot of cultural challenges. There's a lack of openness to new technology. And there's a, you know, despite the, you know, we're in pharma and life sciences, it's a really good business, but, you know, oftentimes there's a lack of long-term thinking, both from the integrator and from the client. And I think for something like this, I think we haven't seen enough progress, in my opinion, because there's a lack of trust between the two groups. In general, people on our side of the fence, the integrators, we're siloed. For example, our group mostly specializes in Delta V. And, you know, we haven't had a lot of business drivers or needs, you know, where the client has exposed us to the, hey, you guys need to get better at understanding SAP and how you're going to integrate with it. You know, and that's a challenge where I see us as integrators, we have to do more to kind of understand how we could be helpful. What can we put in place? If we're doing an OT project, what are we supposed to be doing so that we lay the groundwork for the IT infrastructure to absorb this information at this basic level? And that's still not there. And on the IT perspective, then a lot of the information that you see coming over, it's very high level. It's you know, it's not something that, you know, is well explained to integrators. So I think there's a lack of communication. There's a lack of trust between the two groups in general. Projects are still very one-off, and there's no long-term strategy, both from the integrator side and the client side. And I think that's the crux of the whole thing, because we can talk about the technology all we want, but in essence, it really still, in my view, it boils down to people, and it boils down to people saying, you know what, there's other industries out there that are having insanely great success with integrating IT and OT technologies, and we're not there. Why aren't we there? Well, we're not there because we're not really grabbing it and kind of, you know, going for it. We're kind of sitting back and we're listening to the marketing material, and there's nice white papers on it, but there's no frameworks being put in place. And that's true of both the client and the integrator. So I think collectively as an industry, we need to do better. And, you know, and I think you see certain shifts in mindsets, especially now since COVID has hit. What we are seeing more of is real questions starting to get asked on both sides of the fence, because, you know, there are other industries out there, but I can speak to pharma, and with pharma, we've been doing the same stuff for the last 20 years, you know, and it just hasn't changed. And we don't evolve our thinking quickly enough. We don't properly assess new technologies and how we can apply it. And we've all sorts of dogmatic excuses of why we can't do it for quality reasons and this reason and that reason. Quality is super important, but I think we do take it as an out too often to not evaluate new technology, because data is power, and understanding this data, there's an insane advantage to this. And there is no manufacturing company on the planet right now that doesn't understand that they need to digitally transform. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether you know, it's just across the board. Digital transformation is as essential as hooking up to the internet was in the late 90s. It's just how things have to be, you know, and like companies can't survive without it. Where we are now is we're on the precipice of this, and what we have to kind of decide as system integrators and as, you know, manufacturers is how we're going to commit to this future, because it's coming, and the ones who take advantage of it will see fantastic business results. Manufacturing will be more efficient. Like, look at the current challenges we have in pharma. It's not big facilities with, like, you know, products that are gonna just, you know, we're just gonna stamp it out for 10 years. everyone's talking about multi-product facilities, personalized medicine. That means switching equipment around quicker. That means streamlining the validation process. All these things require understanding of what's going on in the facility and understanding what the business needs are and how to connect those two. And I think, you know, from my perspective, we've kind of been asleep at the wheel a little bit. In OT, ourselves included, you know, we've been focused on, well, you know, this is what the client requires. This is what, you know, this is what this RFP is for this project. We're helping out here. We're making changes, blah, blah, blah. And then on the client side, they're like, well, you know, we don't know what to do with the data. So just put it all in the historian and we'll figure it out later, you know? And that's kind of where we're at. The next stage now is we need to take a moment and we need to start coming up with frameworks that drive real business advantages. And that's possible. The data is being collected. We just don't know what to do with it in general. You know, I know Damien O'Connor knows what to do with it, but like, and Rajiv, but like, I mean, in general, we're just on the precipice of this, and that's where we need to go. So what I would say to ourselves as integrators is we need to learn a little bit more about what those IT guys need and what we can build into our system so that we can be more useful to those people, and vice versa. But in general, we need to stop having this kind of, shall we say, kind of hours-driven industry that is just, you know, fundamentally lacking trust. And we need to start moving towards having a framework and a roadmap and a way to figure out how to really help each other out. Because it's a very consultant-driven industry, and it's a very one-off transactional kind of relationship for the most part. And I think that's part of the issue here. And I think long-term thinking, look at companies like Amazon, it's all long-term thinking. Like, we don't hear a lot of that in pharma, especially on the technology side of things. And I think that's something that both, you know, and then integrators, we don't invest enough in educating our people outside of the immediate need to help the client, you know. And I think those are the two big issues that I see anyway, as things that, you know, we can do to help each other figure out how to come together so we can digitally transform. Because that little picture there, it shows a missing piece in the middle of the bridge. You know, that's it. It's that trust and it's understanding. So, you know, I think all this IT, OT, you know, digital transformation, whatever other buzzwords there are on it, it boils down to there's people over here in IT and they need more information so they can make better business decisions. And we need to provide that information faster and in a more streamlined way so that we can get the raw materials just in time. We can, you know, go dark with some of these facilities. We can streamline some of these OT operations, and we can take advantage of AI and all these other scary things out there where OT are still in general very, very scared of AI, you know, and you talk to anyone, they're like, no way, it's not coming in our facility. And, you know, we kind of have to start to kind of move beyond that. It's not magical thinking anymore. It's reality, and it's here, and it's going to transform everything. And we're either going to be asleep at the wheel as system integrators and manufacturers, or we're going to change things. Because right now there's a race to the bottom out there with manufacturing overseas. And I think we're in America. I know this goes all over the world, but, you know, any Western civilization, I think what's really key here is to take advantage of technology. And to, you know, we have a big challenge in front of us right now with IT, OT, because at some point someone's going to come out with a successful COVID vaccine, and there's other life-saving medicines, and we're not moving quickly enough to turn over facilities and get these things moving. And I think that's on us. And I think the key takeaway for me on IT, OT is that culturally we have to change, and we have to start learning about each other a bit more. OT, we have to learn about IT, and we have to start trusting, and we have to start forming relationships that matter, and they're going to help us be successful together.
Very good. Thank you very much. Digital transformation, we at CSIA believe it's here to stay. I mean, I have been in charge of CSIA for the past 6 years, and I've seen a huge transformation, evolution of the whole topic. And I think this is no longer an if, it is a reality, right? And so now it's an adoption of what can I contribute as a system integrator? What's going to be my role? So thank you very much. Now I would like, on this very same topic of what is the digital system integrator, to invite Rajiv to provide his insight into this. What is the digital system integrator? You're on mute, Rajiv.
Thank you, Jose. Hi, everyone. So I'm going to use this slide. I first want to put it in the context of what I know from the end user perspective, from talking to people like Sarosh. So just want to put that in context, first of all. So I want to put a couple of things in context. Yes, there are a number of things need to be done for digital transformation. Sarosh touched on it. Paul talked a lot about, you know, the data and making the right data available to the business systems. All of that is true. And I'm not saying this just because we are in the business of AI, but at the end of the day, what I understand from talking to people like Sarosh is, what is the end objective? The end objective is, one is a better view of operations from a business point of view. And more importantly, then taking it to the next step is a predictive view of operations. This is what I understand from, you know, the business need before we go through OT layer, IT layer. That's essentially what the business is trying to achieve, right? So if you look at it from that perspective, the driver for all of it, whether you accomplish it using AI, machine learning, or whatever method you use, is you're going to use some form of advanced analytics. Whether you call it AI or not, you're going to use some form of advanced analytics, which essentially can give you that predictive operational view. And you might be using it for a quality application. You might be using it for a throughput application, tech transfer, a number of things that Sarosh touched on as are the opportunities. And I may be speaking specific to pharma again, just because that's how we've started out, right? So if you then look at it, who can really make that happen? So let's start with that premise that with whatever we build, eventually we'll be building some kind of predictive analytics, which have to run real time, just like current OT systems do. What's the fundamental key requirement? Technology is there. Yes, you need to understand technology, but what makes it successful is subject matter expertise. So that SME is subject matter expert. And if you look at who are those subject matter experts, it's OT people, but it's also people in process design, people who design facilities, people who understand operations. So some of you might have heard of this term that Gartner calls citizen data scientist, which is a person who's going to use these analytics, deploy these analytics for the benefit of the business, but isn't a data scientist or isn't a person who specializes in analytics, right? So that's essentially where the value is going to come from. Then if you look to the bottom left side of the screen, we have been using analytics. We are using more analytics now with more tools. But if I look at what the subject matter expert is doing in facilities, not necessarily by choice, but by business requirement, is that they are using analytics for hindsight, for forensics, for finding what went wrong. And where if you look at where the business wants them to go is to go to that predictive level. So from the conversations I've had, the subject matter experts don't have enough time and the business needs this skill. So to me, this becomes the very valuable skill that SIs can build. So currently when customers don't have that skill and they want to do that predictive part, they're going to, and I'm using IT as a generic term, they're using those business software companies that they work with, but those people are farther away from the shop floor than an OT integrator is. And therein, to me, lies the opportunity for the OT integrator and the help and guidance that customers are looking at, like Sarosh mentioned. So this becomes the key skill for a digital SI to have. Now, you cannot be a subject matter expert at a lot of things. So to me, any digital SI who has some vertical focus, some of them have had historically because they're working on one particular industry, But if you're not, you cannot build this type of skill without having some focus on industries and applications. If your skills are very general, which is programming, etc., you cannot bring this value to the customer. So that's the first fundamental thing that I look at in differentiating a digital SI as it comes to digital transformation.
And I would agree with the need for specialization. It's something that we have seen as the industry has required more of a solutions delivery as opposed to just the deployment of and configuration. So I have like one more slide on this topic, which I think it's like explaining this, what you were just trying to close in, which is like we're looking for convergence of the whole organization and move away from the silos that are IT and OT. Do you or Paul, do you want to comment on this slide or add to this question?
Do I? No, I know very little about AI, honestly, in terms of how it could be applied. I know eventually, but I think, you know, what I would say is we do have to learn, ourselves included, you know, but to Rajiv's point, you know, specialization is super important and will be super important in the future. But I think some people have started calling it the T model, where you're really specialized in your silo, but you start to learn about the surrounding silos a little bit better. So we can kind of connect with each other better, because context, you know, for AI or anything else, it's about context and how to gain insight from data. And that's going to lead to knowledge and decision making. So how we get there is building systems that submit and produce useful data and absorb useful data then to make decisions.
Very good.
Jose, if I may quickly, I think to me, I know a lot is talked about the IT OT gap. Paul touched on it from a cultural point of view and learning about each other. I think it's in those three areas, technology, personas, and workflows. So we talk a lot about it from an IT point of view. Paul touched on it from a cultural point of view. But first of all, I want to put it in perspective that when we're talking about OT here, in my opinion, we're talking about level 2, level 3 systems. We're not talking about the PLC or the controller on the shop floor. So that's where the gaps are in taking data from those layers, where a lot of multitude of tools, analytics, sometimes spreadsheets are being used. So when I look at least from my perspective, from the point of view of analytics and digital transformation, when I look at the IT-OT gap, yes, there are a number of things about provisioning data that Paul and Saroj touched on have to be done, but in terms of the evolution of the SI to have these digital subject matter experts in their teams is, in my opinion, is the best thing they can do to future-proof their business and also to act as those trusted advisors that Saroj mentioned.
Very good, very good. So thank you very much. And what you just mentioned about technology, organization, and processes, these three buckets, it's something that we have gone into multiple times here at CSIA. It's part of the framework also from the Singapore Smart Manufacturing document that they put out. So Damien, I would like to bring you in here to the discussion, and we look forward to your input about, what is this digital system integrator from your perspective?
Sure. So I'd like to just kind of frame some of the topics in there, just on the technology, personas, and workflows, and try to show some of the examples as to what the digital SME is trying to solve. So just starting at the technology layer, each group in here, OT and IT data science, has traditionally been responsible for their own enterprise architecture, or IT stack, if you want to call it that. There's a lot of new challenges coming in, especially within IoT and edge computing, for example, that are going to start to challenge those traditional ownership structures. So there is that convergence now with the edge and IoT back into your traditional control system or control layer. Again, when you start to introduce those types of sensors, your scale and the the size of the investment there. You can go from the tens into the hundreds into the thousands of devices very, very quickly too. So orchestration and management between these groups becomes critical as well. On personas, so each site, every project team, every project, it's going to have slightly different takes on the solutions that are preferred to solve those problems. And the features that become prioritized during the selection process is going to differ ultimately then as well. And inside of those teams, you're going to have different business groups partnering together to try and push for their own feature requests. So on the OT manufacturing side, it's got to be, I'm going to need to maintain operation at all costs. And the IT data science side, they want to achieve reliable contextual data sets at a fairly rapid clip. On workflows, one area I come up against quite often is change management, how to actually implement those fixes or new solutions back into the control layer. So if we do get to the point where we're providing IT and data science all of the contextual data they required, and they identify an opportunity for process improvement or optimization, there could be a very large lead time before that change can actually be applied. So kind of to Paul's points earlier, we got to get better at being able to implement the solutions and support customers to being flexible and agile and getting more value out of their systems faster. And just then on the opportunity, there's a lot of areas where us as the system integrators have the chance to actually support customers. So on the enterprise architecture side, designing architectures for our customers that's going to help them converge the edge, the cloud, the traditional control layer, and supporting IT and data science and manufacturing converge their IT infrastructure stacks. Helping the groups actually accomplish their individual business goals is going to require us to bridge that gap between those groups to help them understand the data they actually need to acquire, how they're going to need to contextualize it, and the various software solutions that can be applied to it. And on the workflow, how to actually support and implement changes faster, easier, and ultimately at a lower cost.
Okay, very good. Very good. I'm going to move now to the next part, which is like getting started, you know, and I would like Rajiv to maybe open it up. If you're a system integrator and you're looking at this and you're saying, okay, these are great, this is a great opportunity. It represents also a challenge for my organization. Where should I get started on this? And would you like to comment on this, Rajiv?
Sure. So I'm going to touch on really two things here. What you're looking at in front of you, you know, you could read any white paper, a lot of surveys are being done by different organizations and large consulting companies, business advisory companies. This one I've quoted some sources from McKinsey and Company about from the results of those surveys will come up with, you know, top 2 or top 3 or top 10 barriers to adoption. And I don't want to go through each and every one of them, but I want to touch on a few that I believe are perceived to be bigger barriers than they actually might be. And secondly, they're perceived to be bigger than they are. And secondly, I believe that the OT systems integrator with specialization, and that's a caveat, can help overcome those. So the first one, you know, lack of necessary talent. And once again, I'm coming at it from an analytics point of view. And the thinking sometimes is portrayed as, you know, everyone needs to become a data scientist, or you need to hire a lot of data scientists, or people who can sit there and train machine learning algorithms or write code in Python. I don't think it's about that. And I think the OT integrators understand it very well. And just to, once again, to put it in context, level 2 and level 3, I want to be there, is the talent required is that subject matter expertise and ability to understand the shop floor and translate the shop floor into business needs. That is the talent required. So if you look at what the real challenge is and how to look at it from the point of view of automation that OT SIs have been doing all along, and you know, I use an example that when they use applications from any vendor, Most system integrators are not starting to build applications from scratch. They use a platform or a system from someone for whatever purpose it might be, and their role is to apply it best to that customer's need. That's exactly how they should look at it, and that's exactly what they should expect from a platform technology supplier. Do we make it, does the technology supplier give it to you in such a way that you can act the way you were acting, but you're now acting with a different set of technologies? The second one that I want to talk about is on the bottom right-hand side, which Paul talked about data a lot, right? And there are a few things that what Paul is saying are correct, and a few things I would pick up on what Sarosh is challenging the SI to do, and I think that's where we can make progress for customers like Sarosh and for SIs. So most of the work that we do as control systems integrators generates data, right? So whatever it might be, whether it's a PLC or a new IoT device, whatever you do, we are in the business of generating data for our customers. So our work focuses on generating data. So it is therefore, to Paul's point, to me, it's the duty and also an opportunity for the SI to show that they have an appreciation and for the value of this data. Paul did say that we know this data is valuable, but to Sarosh's point, to become the trusted advisor, what does it mean to show appreciation of that data? We talk all the time about data silos, and Paul mentioned that most of the work that SIs are doing is essentially capital project work, transactional work, hours. So if you're building something great, you still have to respond to those RFPs, compete, and you have to win the work. That's fine, but some awareness. So we talk about data silos. Look at a project that you're working on, which you're implementing today, not something that was implemented 10, 20 years ago that created the silos. Are you actually creating silos for the customer to be aware of that? And could you tell them, hey, if I do it this way, it's going to create that silo, right? And then, in the past, the general approach about data has been, at least in my view, that you generate what is needed for control and you collect what might be needed for forensics and compliance. If the SI starts to learn about what this data can actually be used for, like Paul called it, data is gold, where is that going to gold come from? I think the SIs need to learn more about that so that they can act as those trusted advisors. And then Paul talked about frameworks. There are no frameworks. I would challenge that to some extent, in that there are frameworks, but those frameworks aren't coming from the traditional OT places we went to. I look at things like the Industrial Internet Consortium, the IIRA framework, the RAMI 4 framework that came from Europe. Learn about those, because as technology suppliers, we're learning about those frameworks to build the technology. That's what customers are going to need, and that's how they will see you as trusted advisors. So I think if you learn about the purposes of data more, you'll be able to respect that. You'll be able to guide your customers on sometimes a very small investment at the time of the capital project that you're building for them can mean a lot for the customer in the future. So if you're able to understand what the value will be, how will it be used by those business systems, you can guide them while doing responding to your current RFPs and doing the current automation work you do, but to learn how many different ways this data can be used for.
Very good. Very good. And I have one more slide on this related topic that I would like to move into. Does this help explain this further, Rajiv?
Yeah. So this part, I think, if I can still speak to it, so one was the data part, which is at the bottom, right? So like Damien mentioned, Sarosh mentioned, give us the right kind of data so it'll be very easily used, like Damien said, in a cost-effective way to build those advanced analytics applications. Now I come to the opportunity for the SI, to participate in the SaaS economy, right? We all SIs build some form of solutions all the time, right? Sometimes we do the same thing over and over again, and all SIs, learn from doing what they do, and that learning is right now captured in the form of experience. When an end user selects an SI, yes, cost is an issue, but they look at that experience as part of the selection criteria, right? So in my view, the key attribute of a successful digital SI then is to capture that experience in the form of applications at the top there, right? So this helps the end user, and it creates a SaaS opportunity for the SI to resell that application anywhere in the world to expand your customer footprint. Of course, you have to respect the IP of your customers, but there are many experiences that SIs have that can be turned into applications that they can sell, that can be captured in the form of those applications while respecting the customer's IP. Now, all of this was not possible with traditional OT systems, because even if you did something, those applications were so specific to a particular control system or PLC that even if you tried to capture those, there was no way for you to monetize it, right? But this is what the new digital world offers the SI. You can now build applications from that experience, and you can help your customers with those applications, and it leads to generating SaaS revenue and for you to participate in the SaaS economy. Of course, once again, we come back to that same caveat, you cannot build applications that are captured from your experience without having specialization about a process or an industry vertical.
And how, if you develop one of these applications, I mean, how are you protected from somebody else not just going in there and copying it?
Right. So great point. And I forgot to mention that, like I said, the old OT world did not allow you to do that. The new digital world allows you to do that. And simply, this is how you protect them. So now you can actually create it in the form of an application. You can build APIs for it so that any customer on any platform, and I don't mean the lower level PLCs and control system platforms, but any digital, so that level 2, level 3 functions, which are being taken into the cloud, right? I'm not talking about the edge, I'm not talking about the control system, but the level 3 analytics applications, which most of your customers are taking to the cloud. And for those who are taking it to the cloud, there is an opportunity, build that application, your code is protected. Of course, you need to be careful you did not learn that from a customer and take their IP, but your experience, and build APIs for it so that regardless of the underlying platform, so now your platform specialization doesn't matter as much. You capture that in the form of an application that any customer who might have vendor A's or vendor B's control system or PLC underneath, doesn't matter now. You can sell those applications at those level 3 layers with APIs and protect your own IP. And to me, this is the SaaS economy for the SI.
Very good. I'm looking at my watch, and we have just one more question to go through and then open it up if we have Q&As. And I want to go very practically from the system integrator perspective and look into what is the talent that I need to recruit. When we have run our surveys, one of the topics that keeps our system integrators up at night, and we have run it for multiple years, is attract, retain, and develop talent. And so now moving it into this space, how do you see this being important, to getting the next generation of talent with all these new requirements? Is this making it easier or making it more challenging? Sarosh, you got a perspective on this? And then Damien. You're on mute, Sarosh.
Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I think that the challenge is both for the SI, and there's also a challenge in the organizations too, because this kind of, what some organizations are starting to move is they realize they have to break these silos, right? So even within the organization, they need more general talent that is more general, that can work and bridge the gap between the functions, both OT, there's multiple functions in OT and IT. So they're starting to build these kinds of people that can bridge OT and IT and can understand how to take all these new technologies and get to the business values that the industry wants, right? And also try to understand a little bit about from SI. So they're the ones that will work with the trusted, advisors, as we keep calling them, to really understand more about platforms and others that can be applied. So it's kind of going to be shared on the business side as it's evolving, and also on the SI side. On the SI side, I guess one way is experience. Another way, experience doing POCs, doing these kinds of things, understanding the frameworks that are out there, going back to the industry maybe and taking people that are in the industry are more generalized and understand this. But it is going to be a challenge to get these kinds of talent. Now, it's much more challenging to get a specialized data scientist, a specialized, and they're very hard to come by in both the industry and I'm sure SIs have a challenge to get that. But I think if you stay with the more generalized talent and leverage platforms, you have a better chance of getting those people. But I'll let somebody else speak to the SI piece.
Thank you, Sarosh. Damien?
Yeah, it's a personal problem of mine as well, Jose, that I'm trying to work towards within our own companies, how to acquire this next generation of talent and how that fits within our industry. I see the application of other industries and technology companies in leveraging open source as a way of fostering and creating new talent continuously. I think that's an area that our industry hasn't targeted, that approach to finding and identifying and training new talent and allowing a community to foster around the technology. And that may actually require new business models in the software solutions that are in our industry then too, so that you can actually allow for that level of development and community to work with your systems on a freemium or a trial basis. And that's something that has historically not been possible to do. I could talk all day on the different protocols and software technologies themselves, and we can get very low level, but at a very high level, those are kind of the two areas that I think are part of our future development in our industry.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to go into the Q&As that we asked, and we have two members submitting. One is John Kayson. So he makes the comment that looks like we have not come very far from the Voices days. Don't exactly know what this is meant, but then he has a question. So he is asking whether AI could be part of the solution to closing the gap between IT and OT. So maybe, does anyone want to comment on this?
So I can speak to both parts. Hi, John. I know what he's talking about from a Voices day. John and I've known each other for a long time, always trying to be at the leading edge of applying new technology. So I think that's where John's coming from in that. So he's referring to a particular project where I don't know whether it's been 15 years and John was trying to do this, solve the data problem, give people contextual data. Very interesting question, something to think about. Can AI itself be used for to bridge the gap between IT and OT? Something to think about. I think that's a very challenging and interesting question. I don't have an answer right now, but that would be I guess the futuristic way to look at it.
All right, very good. I will share that at the beginning of the year, I was at the ARC forum in Orlando, and they had the top person for the IT department of Dow Chemical, and then the top OT person at Dow Chemical, sharing their experience, their journey to trying to bridge these two organizations, and how they have been put a very special effort to making these two groups talk, and then having not just at the very top level, but also within the teams, cross-pollinate people in the different teams. It was very, very interesting and like very honest discussion. All right, so we have one more question from Rahil Arif, and he is asking on the IT integration, he's asking if this will invite more risk and vulnerabilities to industrial cyber crimes, particularly for the pharma industry, and what must be the strategies to overcome this challenge?
So
I was going to say, Sarosh, you have a lot of experience most recently in that area.
Yeah, so I think, in pharma, there already has been a convergence of IT, OT, and many pharmaceuticals already and facilities, even without complete visibility to it, because it's not just because of AI and those kinds of other things, but over time, people have been networking systems. People have wanted to have remote vendor access. People have wanted to get data from the systems. And so gone are the old days where we had completely isolated control systems and air gaps and not connected to anything. In pharma, we still live in sometimes that assumption in some facilities that we are air-gapped. But when you actually go in and really do assessments, you find that it's not air-gapped. There has already been a convergence. Even if you have firewalls, are these firewalls and ports being managed in a way to make sure they're not being opened? So I think you cannot, what is important though, is to address this head on, to know that you are going to have some of these connections and convergences, but to really actively get into that space and deal with security rather than living in the assumption that you're completely air-gapped. You need to go in, and there are a lot of frameworks and standards in this OT cybersecurity space. Of course, it's another complication. You need to manage things. Again, it's another place where OT and IT have to speak together, right? Because now you've got to build DMZs, you've got to build layers, you've got to manage that. But it's not just for AI tools or IIoT. It is if you do anything that is connected, and there is already connection. So this is an effort I think everybody has to proactively work on. This is another area where integrators can advise on to make sure that companies and organizations are not increasing their risk; they're actually reducing it. And another area to work with IT on, and not you really have to bring in your IT security folk for this too.
Oh, thank you very much. This was great, and I'm looking at the watch, and I'm being respectful of everybody's time. So I think that this was an excellent discussion. I hope we provided some new insights for the attendees. And the way I see it is that there is a real need for a system integrator, a digital system integrator. And customers want to have these conversations about integrating their data. This is a new discussion, and this is an opportunity for system integrators to develop these capabilities and have like a very differentiated opportunity to have these discussions. And there's a lot of technology, and users are looking for system integrators to help them, figure it out. And there's like a really, for me, dawn of a new world for system integrators, totally being challenged into a new opportunity. So I thank everybody on this panel. Very valuable input also with all your end user experiences. So this is all the time that we have. This is being recorded. You're welcome to watch it again. And I want to thank everybody on this panel and also Colin for making this happen. Everybody attending, thank you very much, and see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.